Hello, dear friends. Is your tea ready? Hurry up. An interesting story is waiting for you to discover. Fasten your seatbelts and let's begin right now. Nathan Drake pushed open the door to La Toile, Manhattan's most sought-after French restaurant, with the self-assuredness of a man who had spent years at the pinnacle of the tech industry. Adjusting his Patek Philippe watch, he held the door open for Sophia Lane, his glamorous new girlfriend. Sophia, a model who regularly adorned the covers of high-fashion magazines, walked in with the kind of poise Nathan had grown to admire and occasionally find exhausting. The atmosphere inside sparkled with sophistication. Chandeliers, crafted from crystal, cast a warm glow over tables set with flawless precision, while the air carried a blend of truffle oil and aged wine. "It's exquisite," Sophia whispered, her perfectly manicured fingers brushing Nathan's arm. She looked radiant in a crimson gown that hugged her figure. Nathan offered a practiced smile, one devoid of real emotion but full of the charm that people expected from him. Having Sophia on his arm was just another facet of the image he worked tirelessly to maintain. They were guided to a central table, a prime spot offering visibility without ostentation. Sophia began discussing an upcoming charity gala focused on ocean preservation. Nathan, however, only half listened, distracted by a movement at the edge of his vision. A server wove expertly between the tables, balancing a tray of dishes. Nathan froze as he recognized her. The deep hazel eyes, soft features. It was unmistakable, even from across the room. Emma Brooks, his ex-wife. But it wasn't merely the surprise of seeing her here that unsettled him. Beneath the crisp black apron of her uniform, her visibly swollen belly revealed a new truth. She was pregnant. A surge of unease hit Nathan, but his face betrayed none of it. Sophia, engrossed in adjusting her menu, didn't notice his shift in focus. "Nathan," she said, her tone edged with mild irritation. Snapping back to reality, he forced a response. "Sorry, what was that?" "I said the Harper's Bazaar team suggested a couple shoot for us. Isn't it a brilliant idea?" she asked. He nodded mechanically, though her words barely registered. Stealing glances at Emma, he noted how different she seemed. Her quiet demeanor now radiated a resilience that clashed with the woman he once knew, a woman often overshadowed by his relentless career and social obligations. When Emma reappeared from the kitchen carrying a bottle of wine, their eyes finally met. The brief moment was electric. Emma faltered, nearly dropping the bottle before steadying herself and continuing toward another table. Her composure was unshaken, her chin held high. "I need to use the restroom," Nathan muttered, standing abruptly. Sophia didn't bother looking up. Emma was heading toward the far end of the restaurant when Nathan intercepted her, blocking her path. She stopped abruptly, her tray wobbling slightly. "Emma," he said, his voice low but charged with emotion. Her hazel eyes narrowed with caution. "Mr. Drake," she replied evenly, her tone professional and distant. "Don't act like I'm just anyone," Nathan countered, his gaze dropping to her stomach. "Is that what I think it is?" Emma straightened, gripping the tray tightly. "I don't know what you think," she replied, her tone measured but firm. "Don't do this," he said, his voice taut with frustration. "You're pregnant. Why am I just now finding out?" Emma drew a steadying breath, as if preparing herself for this moment. "This has nothing to do with you," she said quietly. Nathan's jaw tightened. "That's ridiculous. If this baby is mine, I deserve to know." Emma's eyes locked with his, unwavering. "This isn't a discussion we should have here," she said, her voice softer now. Before he could reply, Emma turned and walked away, leaving Nathan standing in the middle of the bustling restaurant, grappling with the unexpected. Nathan returned to his table, though his mind was elsewhere. Sophia was now absorbed in taking selfies, seemingly indifferent to his distracted mood. But Nathan couldn't shake the thoughts racing through his head. Emma was pregnant. Whose child was it? Why hadn't she told him? When coming home, the footsteps of Nathan Drake echoed in the stillness of his luxurious penthouse apartment. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at the dazzling Manhattan skyline. Yet his thoughts were far from the glowing view. A glass of whiskey sat in his hand, the ice clinking softly as he swirled it absently. The image of Emma, pregnant, waiting tables in an upscale restaurant, played over and over in his mind. It had been 5 months since Emma had vanished from his life. Their marriage had ended quietly, almost too quietly. There were no shouting matches or dramatic farewells, just a suffocating silence as she signed the divorce papers and walked away. At the time, Nathan believed it was what he wanted, freedom to focus on his company, Drake Ventures, without emotional baggage. But now, he wasn't so sure. He turned his phone over in his hand, hesitating before searching for her number. He hadn't deleted it, though he'd told himself many times to do so. Finally, he pressed call. The line rang several times before going to voicemail. Nathan didn't leave a message. He despised being ignored. Emma had always been the one person who could throw him off his game. Meanwhile, Emma sat in her modest Queens apartment, exhaustion evident in her posture. After her shift, she had barely managed to sink onto the couch. Her hand instinctively rested on her belly, and a small smile appeared when she felt the baby move. The gesture was fleeting but genuine. Closing her eyes, she exhaled a long, weary sigh. Seeing Nathan that night had shaken her, though she'd always known it was inevitable. Nathan was a man who thrived on control, and seeing him caught off guard had been almost amusing. Almost. The memories were too painful to allow for laughter. The hurt ran deep. She thought back to how it had all unraveled. At first, she admired Nathan's ambition, his unwavering dedication to building Drake Ventures into a global powerhouse. But over time, she realized that she would always be second to his career. Or perhaps she had never been a priority at all. One night stood out vividly in her mind. They were sharing a rare meal together at home, and she'd brought up the idea of starting a family. Nathan had frozen mid-bite, his fork suspended in the air. "Children, Emma," he'd said, his tone laced with disbelief. "You know how destructive that would be right now. My focus is entirely on Drake Ventures, and you know that." She never mentioned it again. The idea of having children with Nathan seemed as futile as trying to redirect a river with her bare hands. So, when she discovered she was pregnant, it felt like a cruel irony. Their marriage was already teetering on the edge, and she knew Nathan would view the pregnancy not as a blessing but as a complication. Instead of telling him, she made the hardest decision of her life. She left. Now, as she rested on the couch, her phone buzzed beside her. She glanced at the screen, instantly recognizing the number. Nathan. She let the call go unanswered, squeezing her eyes shut in an attempt to block out the surge of emotions he still stirred in her. The next morning, Nathan marched into his office with his usual commanding stride, but his mind was far from steady. His assistant, Megan, tried to stop him to review the day's agenda, but he walked past her without a word. Sitting at his desk, he opened his laptop and began typing, though his thoughts were consumed by Emma and the unanswered questions surrounding her pregnancy. Nathan began digging for information. It didn't take long to uncover the basics about Emma, her address in Queens, the name of the restaurant where she worked, but one detail stopped him cold. A file containing the terms of their divorce revealed something he had somehow overlooked. Emma hadn't asked for a single thing. No share of his wealth, no financial support, nothing. He recalled her words on the day they signed the papers. "I just want to move on, Nathan." At the time, he had taken her statement as a relief, a clean break. But now, it didn't add up. Why hadn't she wanted anything? And why, After everything, was she so determined to keep him out of her life? That evening, Nathan decided it was time to confront her. He arrived at the restaurant near closing time, taking a seat at one of the back tables. Emma spotted him immediately, her heart racing as recognition set in. She tried to focus on her remaining tasks, but she knew avoiding him wasn't an option. When she finally approached the table, Nathan's piercing gaze locked onto her, carrying the intensity that always left her feeling both vulnerable and frustrated. "Can we talk now?" he asked bluntly. "I'm working, Nathan," she replied firmly. "I'll wait," he said, folding his arms. "I'm not leaving without answers." After a long, tense pause, Emma relented. Once the restaurant closed, she met him outside on the sidewalk. The glow of the streetlights cast shadows around them, heightening the tension. "What do you want to know?" she asked, crossing her arms defensively. "Why didn't you tell me about the baby?" he demanded. Emma inhaled deeply before replying. "Because you never wanted children, Nathan. It didn't make sense to bring a child into a marriage that was already falling apart." His brow furrowed. "That wasn't your decision to make alone," he said, his tone sharp. Emma held his gaze, her voice unwavering. "And what would you have done? Stayed out of guilt? Or worse, insisted I?" Her voice faltered but quickly regained its edge. "That I not have the baby?" Nathan froze, her words cutting deep. "I didn't want this child to grow up in a home where they weren't wanted," she added, her voice cracking slightly. For the first time, Nathan was speechless. Her words stung because they carried truth he hadn't been prepared to face. "I deserve to know," he said finally, his voice low. "You took that from me." Emma stared at him for a long moment before replying. "You deserved many things, Nathan, but this child deserves even more." Without another word, she turned and entered her apartment building, leaving Nathan alone on the sidewalk, consumed by the unanswered questions swirling in his mind. Nathan couldn't sleep. Emma's words replayed in his head like a broken record, each one chipping away at his carefully constructed armor. He wasn't a man accustomed to admitting fault, much less accepting being shut out of something as monumental as the existence of his own child. But what unsettled him the most wasn't the pregnancy. It was Emma's belief that he wasn't capable of being a father. Was she right? Nathan had always regarded fatherhood as a someday possibility, something to consider when life was perfect. That someday had never arrived, and now the reality was hitting him harder than he could have imagined. Restless, he got out of bed and headed to his office, his usual refuge for finding clarity. Opening his laptop, he began researching family law attorneys. He had no idea how to navigate the complexities of the situation, but one thing was clear. He wanted to be part of this child's life, whether Emma liked it or not. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Emma was finishing another grueling shift. As she wiped down the counters and stacked chairs, her thoughts lingered on Nathan. Their encounter had dredged up emotions she'd worked so hard to suppress, leaving her feeling raw and exposed. After her latest confrontation with Nathan, Emma felt an additional weight pressing down on her shoulders, as though an unavoidable storm was brewing. Lucas Hayes, the restaurant's manager, noticed her unease while they cleaned up for the night. "Emma, are you okay?" he asked softly. She hesitated before replying, "I'm fine. Just dealing with some things." Lucas didn't push, but his concern was evident. He knew Emma was pregnant and had always respected her boundaries, yet in that moment, he wished he could do more. "If you ever need anything, you know I'm here for you," he offered sincerely. Emma gave him a small, tired smile. "Thank you, Lucas. You already do more than enough." Lucas was everything Nathan wasn't: patient, kind, and understanding. Though he didn't know the details of Emma's past, he could sense she was healing from something painful. He also understood that trust couldn't be forced, even when he wanted to help more. Nathan, however, had begun showing up at the restaurant with increasing frequency, a habit that Emma found both exhausting and infuriating. Though he always sat at a discreet table, his eyes rarely left her, and his presence unsettled not only Emma but also Lucas, who kept a watchful eye on Nathan with growing suspicion. One evening, Nathan called Emma over to his table after dinner. "I don't want to keep doing this," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I want to be part of this." Emma crossed her arms, her expression sharp. "Part of this? Nathan, you don't even know what that means. All you want is control, like always." Nathan took a deep breath, visibly trying to suppress his frustration. "I can learn, Emma. I want to learn, but you need to let me." She stared at him for a long moment before replying, "Learning isn't enough. This isn't something you can control or delegate. Being a parent takes more than that." Before Nathan could respond, Lucas appeared beside them, his presence steady but protective. "Is everything okay here?" he asked, his tone polite but with an undertone of warning. "It's fine, Lucas," Emma said quickly, hoping to defuse the situation. But Nathan, noticing Lucas's protective stance, couldn't help himself. "And who are you?" he asked, standing up, his posture defensive, his gaze narrowing. Lucas didn't flinch. "I'm the manager here, making sure Emma isn't being bothered." Emma quickly stepped between them, her voice firm. "Enough, Nathan. Just go." Nathan hesitated, his jaw tight, but eventually grabbed his coat and walked out. Still, the interaction left him unsettled. Who was Lucas to Emma? Was there something more between them? The thought gnawed at him. A few days later, Nathan took matters into his own hands. He hired a private investigator to dig into Emma's life. What he uncovered left him stunned. Emma had turned down a lucrative job offer at a company Nathan once partnered with, unwilling to have any ties to him. She was meticulously saving every penny to ensure the baby's future, even at the cost of working long, grueling shifts. But the final discovery was the most shocking. Emma had visited a fertility specialist a year before their divorce. She had been trying to get pregnant while they were still married. The revelation shook Nathan to his core. Emma had wanted a child all along, even during their marriage. It contradicted everything he'd believed about her. The realization struck him with a cold, sinking weight. He had never truly asked Emma what she wanted. He had assumed her priorities aligned with his own, and now he saw how wrong he'd been. On a chilly evening, Emma was walking home when Nathan intercepted her at the entrance to her building. "I know about the fertility specialist," he said, his tone blunt and unyielding. Emma froze, her heart pounding. "You had no right to investigate my life," she said, her voice trembling with both anger and disbelief. "I had every right," Nathan countered. "Why didn't you tell me? Were you trying to have a child while we were still married?" Nathan demanded, his voice tight with disbelief. Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Yes, Nathan, I wanted a child. I wanted a family. But you made it crystal clear that it wasn't part of your plan. And yet here you are, pregnant," he shot back, bitterness seeping into his tone. "You made that decision for both of us." "No," she said firmly, her voice unwavering. "I made that decision for myself and for this child because I knew you would never understand." Nathan faltered, words escaping him for a moment. For the first time, he glimpsed the depth of Emma's pain and isolation during their marriage. But that didn't extinguish the simmering anger. Anger not just at her, but at himself. "I want to be part of this," he finally said, his tone resolute. "And I'm not giving up until you let me." Emma stared at him, exhaustion mingling with the fierce determination etched in her features. "Then maybe you should start by learning what it truly means to be present, Nathan. Because words aren't enough." She turned and walked into her building, leaving him alone on the icy sidewalk. Yet something inside him shifted. The Manhattan wind howled that night, scattering dried leaves across the empty streets. Emma stepped off the subway, her pace slow, her energy drained. Her days felt endless, divided between punishing shifts at the restaurant and restless nights in her small apartment. But tonight, something felt off. A tight discomfort gripped her belly, and the baby's movements were unusually erratic. When she finally arrived home, she sank onto the couch, trying to push through the waves of pain. It was too soon. The baby wasn't due for another 2 months. Yet a gnawing instinct told her something was wrong. Across the city, Nathan was in the middle of a business meeting, though his thoughts lingered on Emma. Since their last conversation, a restless unease had settled over him, as though every choice he'd made was wrong. He wasn't a man accustomed to failure, but the realization that he may have irreparably damaged the only relationship that mattered gnawed at him. His phone buzzed, an unknown number lighting up the screen. Against his usual instincts, he answered. "Mr. Drake?" A woman's voice was urgent. "This is Jenna, Emma's neighbor. She's unwell and refusing to call an ambulance." I didn't know who else to contact. Nathan shot to his feet, cutting off the meeting without a word of explanation. Sprinting out of the building, he barked orders to his driver to get him to Emma's address immediately. When Nathan arrived, Emma was slumped on the couch, pale and struggling to breathe evenly. Ronan, her neighbor, was beside her, trying to convince her to go to the hospital. "Emma," Nathan said, his voice steady but brimming with concern, "you don't have a choice. We're going to the hospital." She tried to protest, but another sharp wave of pain silenced her. Without waiting, Nathan scooped her into his arms and carried her to the car. Ronan hesitated, but Nathan's sharp look left no room for argument. During the drive, Emma clutched Nathan's arm tightly, her voice trembling. "It's too soon, Nathan. What if something's wrong?" "Nothing's going to happen," he reassured her, though his own heart pounded in fear. "I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere." His words seemed to ease her panic, and she leaned back against the seat, finally allowing herself to rest. Hours later, Emma was rushed into the delivery room. Nathan stayed by her side, holding her hand and whispering encouragement he didn't even know he was capable of. For the first time, he saw the raw effort and pain in her eyes, and something inside him broke, a wall he had spent years constructing. For the first time, Nathan was truly present, free of distractions, fully immersed in the moment. The piercing cry of a newborn filled the delivery room, and Emma broke into tears of relief. The doctor announced it was a boy, healthy, despite being born prematurely. Nathan stood motionless, staring at the tiny bundle wrapped snugly in a blanket. A surge of emotions he'd never experienced overwhelmed him, threatening to bring tears to his eyes. When the nurse placed the baby in Emma's arms, she gazed at her son with a love so profound it took Nathan's breath away. He stepped closer, his eyes locked on the baby for the first time. "He has your eyes," Emma said softly, her voice filled with wonder. Nathan smiled, an unguarded, genuine smile he hadn't felt in months. In the weeks that followed, Nathan's resolve solidified. He was determined to be part of Emma and the baby's life, not as the man he had been, but as someone better. He began reshaping his life. Delegating more responsibilities at work, he carved out time to be there for Emma and their son. He drove Emma to her medical appointments, stocked her apartment with everything the baby needed, and even tackled diaper changes, awkwardly at first, but with a determination that surprised them both. Emma, however, remained guarded. She saw Nathan's efforts but struggled to fully trust him. Yet, she couldn't ignore the changes she observed. He was more patient, more present, and, for the first time, he truly listened. The turning point came one sunny afternoon at the park. Nathan had taken Emma and the baby, now named Liam, for a walk. While Emma rested on a bench, Nathan held Liam in his arms, rocking him gently. He looked down at his son's tiny face, marveling at the peaceful weight in his arms. For the first time in his life, he felt a sense of completeness he had never known. "Emma," he said, turning to her with an earnestness that caught her off guard. "I know I've made so many mistakes. I know you have every reason not to trust me. But I want you to know that I'll do whatever it takes, not just for Liam, but for you. You two are all that matter to me now." Emma was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on Nathan and Liam. Finally, she spoke. "I believe in change, Nathan," she said carefully, "but I can't promise anything. It's going to take time." Nathan nodded, her words sinking in. He understood that trust wouldn't be rebuilt overnight, but her openness gave him hope. He accepted her words as the beginning of something new. That evening, as Emma gently tucked Liam into his crib, Nathan stood silently in the doorway, watching them with a quiet smile. For the first time in years, he felt at peace, as if he had finally found where he was meant to be. The story ended as it had begun, with a man trying to navigate the complexities of life. But now, Nathan wasn't trying to control the world around him. He was learning to truly be a part of it. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's story. For more meaningful stories, please subscribe to our channel. Your support is a great source of motivation for us. Goodbye and see you again in the next stories.